Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. Now, Americans are struggling to find affordable places to live. Detroit is no exception. According to a report from the Detroit Justice Center, Detroit is behind in supplying affordable homes to residents. Still, this is an issue city leaders have tried to address. For the better part of a decade, officials have invested millions of dollars into affordable housing projects, but the city is still unable to keep up with demand. Those efforts have only multiplied in recent years. Julia Cardi is an investigative reporter for the Detroit News. She joins me now to explain the city's past investments and the work that's happening now to get more affordable housing in the city. Julia, welcome to the Metro.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, according to the 2023 report done by the Detroit Justice Center, which you reference in your reporting, there is a shortage of affordable housing in Detroit. There aren't enough units available or planned to keep up with the number of households who need them. So can you first explain how we got to this place?
So shout out to the Detroit Justice Center. Their report has done a lot of heavy lifting.
Yes.
And when I was researching this story, the figure that they tried to put on Detroit's need for the number of affordable units, I really felt like was the most detailed figure that I found. Other estimates that I ran across in my reporting ranged from a goal of 2,000 put out by the city in a 2018 Affordable Housing Strategy report. Mayoral candidate Solomon Kinloch has set a target of 10,000 new units.
Lofty, hefty.
But the 46,000 figure that the Detroit Justice Center referenced in its 2023 report was really based on looking at census data about how many Detroiters at a given point are cost burdened on housing, spending more than 30% of their income on housing, and then looking at how many people are living in homelessness as well, and then taking into account at the time the number of affordable units the city had or were planned. And so that figure came out to, all told, about 46,000 units short for needed affordable housing.
And
units
that is right now. That's according to the report right now. 46,000 units, affordable housing units are needed.
That was the figure they came up with. And as I mentioned, I felt like that was the most detailed figure that I came across.
Yeah. That's astounding amount of affordable housing units or just homes and households that are needed right now. It's actually staggering. So households can be classified into two groups. You did break that down just a little bit there. Those who are cost burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on housing. And then there is the unhoused population. Advocates for more affordable homes would argue that a direct solution to cost burdened households is to just simply increase access to homes that fit within their budget. But the solution is less direct for the unhoused population. Affordable housing alone cannot solve homelessness. So can you talk about the role affordable housing plays as it pertains to the particular population?
Sure. And I didn't delve into that quite as much in my reporting, to be fair, but one approach that does get used to address homelessness is what is called permanent supportive housing, which is an approach of pairing affordable housing with wraparound services. So access to social services, behavioral health services, things that are intended to address root causes of homelessness. And so I think the philosophy there is not only we need to meet people's immediate need for housing, but also how can we give them other services that will help increased long-term stability.
Exactly. Yeah, permanent stability in that particular situation. But so 7 years ago, the city did announce plans to invest $250 million into affordable housing over 5 years. There have been a number of investments over the years since then. What's the update on those efforts, and were they able to make a dent in the amount of housing the city needs? What's preventing the city from successfully building enough units?
It does seem that they have made a dent. I dove into some city data, and I first looked at 2018 to 2023 because that was the period the city pinpointed in its 2018 strategy report for wanting to create 2,000 new affordable units. And so from 2018 to 2023, it appeared that about 900 new units were created, either through new construction or rehabilitation of existing buildings. And looking also, again, at city data, it appears that there are about 1,400 new units under construction at the moment. And when I spoke to experts for this reporting, nobody was really trying to point at any particular person or anything like that about why the need hasn't been met. But it seems like the general sentiment is that there just is so much need that it's not something that is going to be met in a year. And so I guess I wonder, is it mostly, at least right now, a function of there just is so much need that it's just going to take a long time under our current frameworks to meet the actual need for new units?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there are, according to the report, 1,400 new units that are under construction. But from 2018 to 2023, only 900 out of that 2,000 affordable housing unit goal was met, which is what, like you said, no one wants to point the finger or say why it's happening because there's so many different things that are compounding, resulting in us having lack of affordable housing in the city. You're listening to The Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Tia Graham, and we're discussing the city of Detroit's efforts to construct new affordable housing. My guest is Julia Cardi, an investigative reporter at the Detroit News. Now, let's talk about the city's efforts today. You just talked about 1,400 are currently under construction in terms of affordable housing. And as we've discussed, the need for affordable units is still very high. What are the city's plans, and how are they incentivizing developers to build more today?
So one thing that stood out to me as I was reporting this story is that it seems like Detroit has a lot of opportunity for locally developed tools, because there are things that are distinctive about the city, that factors that don't necessarily only exist in Detroit, but things that make sort of locally developed incentives and tools an interesting approach. And one thing that's really recent is something called the Payment in Lieu of Taxes, or pilot program. And essentially what it means is that for affordable units, instead of the regular property tax rate, developers can pay a percentage of the rental revenue that they collect. And so what that's meant to incentivize is development of units that are targeted at Detroiters making sort of the lower tiers of income. So essentially, the more affordable you're making housing, the lower percentage, or I'm sorry, the less you're paying. And so that ordinance was expanded to last fall by City Council, and it's something that Mayor Mike Duggan has really put his weight behind, as well as city council members. And
how's the program going since it started last fall into where we are today?
So from what I got from the city, since applications opened this year, there have been over 70 applications completed and more than 100 in progress currently. One thing that the city did tell me was they don't track data on how many of those applications are submitted by the same developer. So there are probably multiple applications by the same developer kind of in the pipeline. And one thing that really stuck out to me about pilot as a local incentive is, and bear with me while we talk about some math here,
okay.
is so zooming back out a little bit. Essentially, the federal government defines housing as affordable when you are spending no more than 30% of your income on housing costs, including utilities. And if you're a developer and you are using federal income, or you're using federal funding, you have to use the federal guidelines for median income in order to get that federal funding. But a big criticism is that the federal income guidelines that Detroit is part of are much higher than what the average Detroiter is really making. But every expert I talked to acknowledged that you simply cannot develop affordable housing without federal funding. We just don't have a framework in place right now to develop it without federal funding. And so advocates look at tools like the pilot ordinance as a way to develop housing that is targeted at the lowest income Detroiters, but is still working within what the federal government requires you to in order to use their funding, if that makes sense.
Yes. I mean, we had a recent conversation on the show actually just yesterday with Professor Atul Hene, and we were talking about the lack of affordable housing, just the loss of homes here in the city of Detroit, the loss of that generational wealth, but once again, just that shortage there and why it's happening. And there's so many different reasons why we have so many barriers here in the city of Detroit in terms of getting to affordable housing. But I do want to get to the residents before I do let you go. Where are the residents in all of this, the people who are impacted by these changes and the things that are happening? Do they have a say in this kind of housing availability or where housing is available?
And those are always interesting conversations because I think residents are not necessarily always thinking about the way that policy affects housing at as granular of a level as we are, but they know what they're paying and they know whether they can afford it. And so when I talk to residents, I hear from them things in just kind of a very simple, everyday way. People say, I want to be able to afford my rent and stay in this neighborhood. I don't want to get priced out. I don't want my property taxes to be so high. I did speak to one resident who lives in the Hubbard Richard neighborhood, so close to Corktown, and I think is experiencing some of the same sort of cost pressures that a place like Corktown has been experiencing. And, he said, I think affordability should really be defined as what a Detroiter working full-time at minimum wage can afford. I think that's how it should be defined. And I spoke to another young woman who is living in Corktown, and she and her partner have been looking for a new apartment, and they're worried that they may get priced out of the neighborhood because of the way that rents are. And I think there seems to be this interesting conversation about how early do you sort of need to get into a neighborhood to preserve affordability before people are already priced out. And so that seems to be an interesting balance with investing in neighborhoods where prices are going up, there's activity happening, they're desirable. But then that brings up the question, are people who have been there for a long time already getting priced out?
Julia Cardi is an investigative reporter at the Detroit News. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro and explaining to us about that new report coming out from the Detroit Justice Center.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, we'll look at a new effort to build affordable housing in Southwest Detroit. We'll be right back on the Metro. You all stay right there. Welcome back to the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. Detroit residents need more affordable housing, as we just heard from Julia Cardi of the Detroit News. But the Campbell Street Apartments is a new $18 million affordable housing development in Southwest Detroit's East Chadsey-Condon neighborhood. President of MiSide Community Impact Network, Sean DeFore, joined the Metro recently to discuss the project ahead of its ribbon-cutting ceremony. Explain to folks who aren't aware, but who and what is MiSide? Can you talk a little bit about the combination of those two organizations that used to exist that came together to create MiSide?
Absolutely. So MiSide Community Impact Network was formed a year and a half ago through the merger of two historic Detroit nonprofit organizations, Southwest Solutions and Development Centers, Inc. And we came together to bring behavioral health, affordable housing, employment supports, and early childhood supports under one roof, because our organizations found that those were the challenges our families most often faced, and that were most often interconnected.
And just thinking about the problems that you hear from community members, can you talk just a little bit about some of the things that community members talked about wanting coming to their community?
Absolutely. So in the East Chadsey-Condon area, which is where the Campbell Street Apartments were built, right on Michigan Avenue, about a mile and a half from Michigan Central Station, residents wanted the same things you and I want in their neighborhood. They want a coffee shop. They want a gym where they can work out. They want access to a grocery store, which there happens to be a wonderful grocery store right across the street from this new apartment building. They want a place where they can live, work, and play. And we're pretty proud that our new apartment building actually offers that right down the street from Corktown.
And tell us a little bit about the apartments themselves. Who qualifies, and are the apartments already filled? What should people who are interested know about applying know about these apartments?
Yeah, so the apartment building we just finished, Campbell Street Apartments, has 40 units, and they are affordable housing, which means a number of different things. But for these units, it means that anybody who is at 60% of the area median income or below would qualify to live in one of the units in Campbell Street Apartments. And we have units ranging from 1 bedroom to 3 bedroom. And all of the units are actually vouchered. So they have a voucher from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority attached to them, which means if somebody qualifies and is able to live in Campbell Street, they actually never pay more than a third of their income toward rent, which is a challenge that so many Detroiters face right now. Their housing burden's paying 50% or more of their income just toward housing. And in this case, we sort of guarantee that anybody who qualifies to live there won't be housing burdened. They'll only have to pay 30%, which is pretty exciting.
It's really, really exciting. Actually, I know so many of us, including myself, who pay a lot more of their personal income and rent every month. So this project does seem like a big undertaking, a big project. How did you make it happen and make it happen so quickly? Because usually you don't hear about projects of this capacity coming up so quickly.
Yeah, not often enough. And, thankfully, MiSide and previously Southwest Solutions have been in the affordable housing development business since the late 90s. So, almost 25 years. And in that time, we've brought to life somewhere around 1,500 units of affordable housing, all in the city of Detroit. So this is core. This is a core part of what we do. But a project like this takes so much support. We had support from Eagle that allowed us to do the soil remediation and cleanup to make this site ready for affordable housing. We had low-income housing tax credits from MISHDA and from the state of Michigan that helped with the financing of the development. We had matching funds from the city, from Mayor Duggan's administration that helped support bringing this together. And then PNC actually provided a loan to help bring the project to life. All in total, it's about $18 million to build this apartment building. And it took about 3.5 years to actually bring it to life. So it takes a village to build affordable housing.
Which is something that we often talk about, is that community aspect. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what you all do at MiSide, especially in terms of the community that you all are serving. But I do want to talk just a little bit more in depth, if you can, about the relationship and partnership that you have with the city of Detroit, as well as state agencies, because oftentimes, once again, we may hear that those things and working with those entities may be a little bit of maybe speed bumps there or roadblocks there. So can you just talk about how you all have been able to foster relationships with the city of Detroit and other state agencies?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the 25 years that we've been doing this work, part of what allows us to continue to do it and do it as well as we have is because of those relationships that we've developed over the years. The Housing and Revitalization Department that is a part of the city is a really key partner in helping us with land acquisition and gap funding to be able to make affordable housing happen. The support that we get from the city, which helps give us credibility with the state Housing Development Authority, MISHDA, which is where a lot of the financing comes from. We couldn't do it without those kinds of relationships. Even our local councilwoman, Gabriela Santiago Romero, was instrumental in getting us funds to actually furnish these units, which is something I forgot to mention, is that every one of these units comes furnished, which is a really helpful start for families who are now moving into a new apartment to be able to save the cost of having to furnish it. But all those relationships are key to making a development like this happen. And what's really exciting is on this same property, hopefully later this year, we'll be breaking ground on an additional 40 units, which will be called Weston Avenue Apartments, which will hopefully be available for rent in 2026.
Which we are definitely going to get more into, because I do want to know more about the community that you all are trying to make right now. We're talking about a new affordable housing development in Southwest Detroit. Our guest is Sean DeFore, President and CEO of MiSide Community Impact Network. Now, let's talk a little bit about the community itself and the overall goal for Michigan Avenue in the area. What are your goals for connecting Southwest Detroit and Corktown?
So you heard me mention that one of the things we love about this neighborhood is we want to build a neighborhood where people who are low to moderate income can live, work, and play right in a key city in Detroit. And with the opening of Michigan Central Station, which we're all just thrilled about, we are starting to see transformation in Corktown with a lot of new development coming in. And affordability, unfortunately, is starting to go down in that neighborhood. East Chadsey-Condon, which is just 1.5 miles away from Michigan Central Station, is a place where you have a community of low and moderate income families who have been living there, in some cases, for generations. They love their neighborhood. And there's a real opportunity here to grow affordable housing to make sure that people who live there now can live there long term, even as this part of the city starts to be redeveloped because of the development that's happening right down the street in Corktown. And so part of our goal is to create these anchors of affordability that'll be there forever for the families and residents that are already there, and then hopefully to start building housing that folks can actually purchase who are low to moderate income in the community because they live there and they want to own a piece of their neighborhood and they want to stay long term. But this is a vibrant community with lots of families, parks, 3 really excellent schools, Hope of Detroit, a New Paradigm, and Cesar Chavez Academy, all in the area. It's just a great neighborhood.
That was my conversation with Sean DeFore, the president and CEO of MiSide Community Impact Network. Coming up, we'll learn all about a new initiative that can help Michiganders obtain a post-secondary education or professional certificate by 2030. We'll learn more about it in just about 7 minutes or so. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. And this is The Metro. Of course, stay with us.